This is Bumping Into That Sound.
Welcome back to the show where tone matters and the legends behind the gear tell their stories. My name is Francis. Today we're diving into the world of high gain history with a man who's helped define the sound of an era. He's the brain behind some of the most iconic amps of the 70s, 80s and 90s, from fire-breathing hot-rodded Marshalls to his own Metaltronix monsters. He's worked with players like Steve Vai, George Lynch, and he's never stopped pushing the boundaries of tone and innovation. I'm talking, of course, about the one and only Lee Jackson, amp builder, designer, and certified tone legend. Whether you know him from his custom mods or his original creations, this is a conversation that every tone chaser will want to hear. And while you're here, if you're chasing killer mods and serious tone, be sure to visit bumpingintothatsound.com.au, where you can grab the legendary Tones Hot Mod and Mr. Scary mods, the all-tube plug-in gain stage that drops straight into your amp with no drilling, no cutting, and no wiring required. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Lee Jackson.
Hello.
Lee, how you going?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, really good. Thank you very much for giving up your Friday afternoon.
Oh, no problem. Hold on. Let me turn down my headset. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I've got you perfect.
Okay, great.
Lee, look, it's great to meet you. I feel really really privileged to be able to spend a little bit of time with you and capture a bit of your insight.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I enjoy doing this stuff because, it makes me remember about the old days and the current days. It kind of brings back memories on, because a lot of times people ask me about the 80s, right? Because
Yeah.
the 80s, I worked on just about every album that you can think of during that time. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but between Dokken and Rat and Dave Lee Roth and all those, those bands, it was like week after week. I had this, one of my first employees, we had a phone between us because I'd be busy and he'd pick up the phone, because we were, that time I had a modification company that was called Metaltronix, and it was there in the valley north of Hollywood. And it was during this time, it was wild because we would go to lunch and talk about who would be great to work with. And the phone would ring and he'd be on the phone and he would point at it and it was like unbelievable. It's just somebody that we talked about now calling us and saying, would you work on our next album, designing the amps and work with them. And it went week after week. The only thing I really regret is, there wasn't camcorders then. Like the only way you could film then was with real motion picture cameras and those portable recording systems. That's like doing a movie. That's the only way.
Convenient.
Well, yeah, you had to have a full setup. It was like now you could take your phone or you could take a camcorder but I didn't have any other than a camera, and a lot of times I didn't want to be intrusive to the artist, right? I didn't want to be that guy showing up and going, hey, let's all take pictures,
Yeah, definitely.
And but yeah, so I got pictures, but I would have loved to get video footage of working with the different artists and on the different projects. And
Did you know at the time, like when this was all happening, were you aware that it was special or it just felt like normal?
Well, it was special because we got to work on, at the time, the biggest albums that were happening in the world, right? I knew that, Dokken was the first big one, right? Because before George, he kind of kicked it off for me to want to just start building for other artists. Because, see, I was originally an artist and I used to build for myself because I was in bands on the Sunset Strip. And we knew, people wonder how it exploded so fast. It's because we all knew each other. We all hung around,
Right.
at all the clubs and, the Whiskey, the Roxy, all the, at that time, the Starwood and these clubs, we were all young guitar players, right? And all trying to get our place and make, and so I had been building my own custom gear for years, and it was George that, was asking me, "Hey, come on, build me,
Oh,
build me,
really?
yeah, build me some stuff." And I said, finally, I gave in. I said, "Sure, I'll do that." And built him the amps for Underlock and Key. I was literally tweaking those amps during the session. I had chassis open and spent a lot of time there on that album. And it was phenomenal. George is a phenomenal player, so I knew it was going to be a great album. But when it broke big worldwide because he had this sound. And then, we didn't have internet then, but I had phones, and phones started ringing, and people started, going, "Hey, we
Everyone
want
wanted that
that."
sound.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then on top of that, the other guitar players, like, right after George, who's going to call Warren DeMartini, right? Because they're doing Invasion of Your Privacy, and he wants custom amps for that album. So then after that, Extreme, and then just kept going, bang, bang,
Wow.
bang,
Just a big
and
snowball.
yeah, it snowballed. It was week by week by week, and during all this, we also had like Paul Gilbert, right,
Yeah.
with Racer X, and he just moved into town, and it was really interesting because Paul had no idea how amazing he was at all. And when
Oh, really?
oh yeah, he showed up to my store with a 50-watt and 100-watt Marshall, and he was totally tall and geeky then, with like a boy's haircut, and sits down the two amps and said, "They're telling me that you have to work on these," because he just came into town. I said, "Sure, Paul," and we didn't know anything about him. So one of the things we did at Metaltronix is in the front area of the store. There was a storefront in the front, not really a storefront, but an open area. And then the shop was behind these doors that you couldn't see unless you went through. And we always made everybody play their gear before they took it, because that was the whole idea. We're building custom gear. We want you to be happy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
everybody wants to make a living, but it was more important that we were causing a wave, right? And so we get his amps done, and here comes Paul. And I said, "Be sure to bring a guitar." So he brings the guitar, and we set him all up, and he plugs in, and he starts playing. And everybody, I mean, nobody was playing like Paul. You realize that when Paul came about. I mean, nobody was playing like that. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. And he didn't know it. I mean, he went up the ranks really fast, because everywhere he showed up, people were like, "Paul Gilbert," it was like, so
Right.
he went up the ladder pretty quick. So while I was doing these other albums, he started doing albums, like with after Racer X, he went into Mr. Big, right, and the whole Mr. Big stuff, which was interesting because um, Billy was playing with him on Mr. Big, and I'm trying to think. Mr. Big was either before or after Eat 'Em and Smile, when I worked with David Lee Roth on that, because Billy was part of that project, but I was working with Steve Vai on that, and but
Jeez.
it all blends in together at some point. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what year or what month each one of these things happened, but they did go pretty good. I mean, they were there was wild stuff. I mean, we're working on everything from that to Al Yankovic doing "Beat It." I mean,
Wow. Geez. So you just
you
across
know,
so much.
yeah, it was really wild, because and then there was a complete different wing of stuff I was building, and that was for all the session players that were on all the TV shows, and that was a whole different. They wanted custom fenders, so I was doing a bunch of custom fenders for them, and
So when you're doing a custom Fender, I mean, I'm very familiar with the Marshall sound and the Marshall mods that give you more of the same and what
Right.
everyone loves. But what is it that when you're working on a Fender that you tweak and change to satisfy someone chasing a mod to a Fender?
Well, there's some people that we built Fenders that sounded just like modified Marshalls because they just wanted a Fender, and we built it
Oh,
to have that kind of front end. But then
right.
you had players, like if they needed a super clean channel, you'd work on it so that the clean channel was really clean, and then they'd want they would use like an AB foot switch, and then they'd want, let's say one of the most popular was a deluxe because it was the right sound and the right size for these guys to go do sessions with, and for all the TV shows, and also for other albums they would do, they would come in as a guitar player and play on it. So then the Fenders, you know it's kind of like, you didn't want, it was kind of down the road of a boogie, but you didn't want it to sound like a boogie, because to me, boogies are very nasally sounding,
Okay.
and my stuff has more of an open sound. And it's just, everybody goes after things differently, in the way they, because I'm a guitar player, I'm really building this stuff for me.
Yeah. Yeah. How you understand it, how you feel it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's for
Yep.
me. I mean, most of the products that I've come up with throughout my life was because I wanted it, and then
Yeah.
after I wanted it, I said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And they go, "I want that too." And it's like, so it's better. I don't want to go down all these roads, but at one time I worked for Fender, right? I don't know if you know about that.
Yes.
Is
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
yeah,
I did.
uh,
I did hear about that.
and what was interesting during the Fender years is because to go through the quick chronologic, um, I had met Paul Rivera, and I originally worked at Rivera Research out of his garage. Me and him in this little place up in Tahunga Canyon,
Wow.
Tahunga Canyon, and I left there, I actually went off to do work. I went off to work at Pig Nose. That's another story. But during that time, he went to go work for Fender, and I get a call from him going, "You want a job at Fender? I need you in R&D." I said, "Sure." I'd come out there. So now I'm getting to the point that I was bringing it up, is that here I come into Fender, and there's no guitar players that are working in the amp division. They're
Wow.
what they're I mean, not to say anything bad, because I love all the guys. I still stay in contact with a lot of them. What they would do is they had this big room, and it was really nice room. It was designed to bring people in, and they would bring all their product out, their new product. And literally, like the white coat guys, they would have these clipboards with this questionnaire, and they'd have all these famous guitar players come in and play, and then they'd ask them questions. So, what do you think about this, right? And somebody would say, "Chocolatey luscious." Okay, chocolatey luscious, And the funny thing is that then they go back to after the meet, after it was over, and they're trying to figure out what this guy mean by
Yeah.
it needs this, or it needs that, right? And I literally was the only guitar player. Well, Paul played guitar, no question. Paul played, but meaning Rivera.
Yep.
Yeah, and I played guitar, and it was like a big change, because it's like, no, we don't need to ask people. We're going to sit here and play on this, and
Yeah.
this sounds good. No, this doesn't sound good. And
Well, even the efficiency of having players in house, because otherwise you're having to then go away, make all these changes you think might be right, and then come back again and do another development day.
that's right. Well, yeah, it makes it a lot quicker, and plus, it's so strange, asking somebody I mean, it's cool to let a bunch of people play, and they tell you, "I like it, I don't like it,"
Yeah.
because that'll bring me to, at one point when I went over to Ampeg, um, but um, but yeah, so at Fender, it moved along really well, because during that era we did the Deluxe 2, the Concert, the Twin 2, and then there was a division that created this new solid state stuff, that they brought these guys in that were like really hot at that kind of, and they did a good job for a solid state amp. I mean, it's called the London series, I think it was, and
Okay.
it doesn't sound like tubes. Come on,
Yeah.
no solid state sounds like tubes.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It just, I'm not going to go on that modeling road, but tubes are tubes. It's
Yeah.
lightning in a bottle.
It's a
But
bit like comparing the sound of a V8 engine going past versus hearing it on a CD or a tape.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, the reality of that sound. The only thing that I can say that's close to that is a G chord through a 50,000 watt PA when I was playing in bands. When I was in Banshee, we played some big like places. And when you hit that G chord with these big PA systems, that sounds like a V8 engine. I mean, it
Yeah, I
moves
can
your
imagine.
chest. The stage is shaking. I mean,
Wow.
that becomes very addicting. I miss playing extremely loud.
Yeah.
It's definitely fun, but yeah, not to get off on a tangent, but when I went to go work for Ampeg, um, the first thing they did, which which was not fun, is they took everybody that worked for the company and their product and put them beside them and had me walk around and play each one of their gear and evaluate it in front of them.
Oh,
And so
geez.
let's just say I made a lot of friends and a lot of enemies
Yeah,
because
that's not going to be good for staff morale, is it? That's
no, it's because it's like, well, that's great. Wow, this is not so great,
yeah. That's a
and it's
tough
like
gig.
there's the guy, right? And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, because I didn't realize that they had put the engineer in the room with me, right? There was like 10 engineers, and with 10 different product lines, right? And because that's why they were bringing me in. It was to design a new product line for them, and they wanted like any company, you're when you're new, you're the specialist. When you're old, they start not
Yep.
listening to you anymore. Not old in age, old in time of being there, right? It's like
Yeah.
2 weeks in, you're a genius,
Yeah.
2 or 3 years in, it's like, we're not listening to you anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that point I was the new guy being brought in, and anyway, I didn't
Wow.
mean to get on a tangent,
No, you
but
can go on as many tangents and roads as you like. I love hearing these
but
stories.
ask me any question. Yeah, ask me any question you want. I'm
Well,
just
I'm cute. I've got a list of things that I really want to quiz you on
sure,
because of your
please.
deep insight and you've been through so much. Do you remember being in the industry and you've got the 70s classic rock, so you've got
Right.
that signature sound like Bad Company. Let's use them as a reference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it changes and it
Right.
goes into that 80s. I suppose you could define it as hot rodded Marshall sound.
Yeah. Hypergain.
Yeah.
Hypergain. Yeah.
Do you remember, recognizing that, oh, okay, well, we're leaving one chapter behind and going into another? Or was it just a slow progression that you then realized looking back, oh, I didn't realize we'd gone 10 steps forward?
Well, it was kind of an interesting time because remember, I'm going to show my age now, but I played in the 70s through stock marshals and put up with, I mean, we used to have to throw carpets over them and all kinds of, crank them up without killing everybody in the first couple rows, and or turning them around backwards or doing all, that
Yeah.
was also during the first the whole power soaks. We were experimenting. There wasn't any one on the market, but people were talking, and we figured out how to make these power soak things so that you could plug your amp into it and dial it down so that you could get that Bad Company kind of distortion or AC/DC kind of
Yep.
distortion, but not over the top. And so for me, because I wanted more, I immediately started looking into modifying myself because
Oh, right.
the first thing that came around is somebody talked about this guy in Whittier, and that's out in California, that puts a master volume on your amplifier. And we're all like, volume. And it was like this whole, like, it's very simple now that we think about it. It's just a pot after the treble control. But, but back then it was like voodoo, right? And this guy
Ah.
was one of the original guys of Trainer. Remember Trainer amps?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So this guy was out in Whittier, and I remember bringing him. At the time, I had a JMP, like a 70s JMP, and I took it out to him, and I brought it, and it was all like, he puts in the volume control, and I pay him. It wasn't very much. And I bring it back, and now I have a master volume. Well, the problem with that is, without a lot of gain in the front end, the master volume doesn't do a lot, right? I mean, you can crank the preamp all the way up, but it's more of that, crunchy kind of distortion, but not that ripping
Not gain.
distortion, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yep.
And so while all this is going on, I'm going to the NAMM show because I'm buying gear at this music store. So they're letting me have tickets to get to the NAMM show, right? Because remember, the NAMM show was this special thing you can't go to unless you're invited by either a member or a company, right? You just can't go. The public is not.
Wow. So you have to be in the circle as such.
You have to be in the circle. My case was the music store. I was buying the Marshall stacks, which they were excited. As a kid, they gave me the ability to go to the NAMM show. So I go to the NAMM show, and back then, no question, the head of every company was standing there, like Jim Marshall and everybody from whatever company you could get to, they were there. And it just so happened that Marshall's top engineer, I can't think of his name right now, but he was there. And I guess I asked the right questions because, not being that normal kid that just like, asking for stuff, I'm asking specifically, I'm going, I've got this Marshall, I'm looking for this sound. And I find out this guy worked on Jimi Hendrix amps, which also I was very much a Jimi Hendrix nut. And I'll still am. But so he said to me, he goes, when I get back, give me your address. When I get back, I'll send you a schematic of some stuff. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. And I, you think, yeah, right. What comes to them? And I have it framed somewhere, not it's somewhere. I have that original schematic with his markings on what to change to get what I was looking for. And so that started me on to start modding. And I started modding, and plus I was working with Paul Rivera, right? And Paul was modding Fenders and Marshalls during that period of time. So I was learning what Paul was doing, and I liked what he was doing, but I wanted something different, right? I mean, I learned a lot from Paul, no question. And so this all it's that perfect time. It's all timing, right? Everything is timing. So I'm a guitar player. I'm looking for this sound. I'm working with Paul, playing in bands, and I'm working on my own Marshall, and kept upping the game, right? Because this worked. Well, what if I had another tube? Now we're starting to get more gain. And I'm, like I said, I'm playing on the Sunset Strip, and in the audience are some of these famous guitar players. They're not famous yet. They're just the Hollywood set, or they're going out to see the bands, right?
Right.
And so I'm getting recognition because I've got this sound. The reality is George Lynch's first sound was the sound I was getting on the Sunset Strip. It wasn't like George had the first one. There was just my rig that I built from. The same thing goes with Steve Vai on Eat and Smile. He calls me up because we had mutual friends, that band Vixen, that girl band.
Yeah.
So we knew each other through that. So he calls me up and he goes, help, I'm working on this album. It's secret, but I need help right now. And I was like, at this time I was really busy. I had tons of amps I was working on, and I said, George, I can't build you something for like weeks. I mean, And he's like, I need it tomorrow. I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I sent 2 of my employees to my house and went and got my 2 modified Marshalls from my house. And I told him grab 2 cabinets too, because I knew he was using those Carvins. Sorry, some of the worst cabinets I've ever heard in my life. And not saying anything bad about Carvin, love the guys, but the cabinets just were not happening. So they ran off. They got the 2 heads, and the 2 cabinets, and we rushed down to the studio. I met him down there, and we unloaded these 2 heads and 2 cabinets, and sitting, I'm not kidding, like a semicircle is Dave Lee Roth, Steve Vai, and Ted Templeton. I think that's the guy that was the engineer, the one that did the Van Halen stuff. And anyway, they got their arms crossed, like, impress me kind of thing, like, because they've been trying to get, I didn't know, but they've been trying to get tones for over 2 weeks, and it wasn't happening. So it was a big pressure moment. So my guys, we all plug it all in, blah, 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 blah. At that time, I was making a splitter. I split it was an active splitter. I split to the 2 heads, got the guitar cord, handed it to Steve Vai. He plugs in the guitar, hits the first chord, and starts playing. Both Ted and David jumped straight up in the air going, yes,
I found the sound.
And I'm not kidding you. David pulls a wad of cash out of his pocket and starts giving it to my guys. And I'm like, well, it's me. But I'm happy for my guys, right? He's giving them money. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I said, look, you can use my amps for the whole album, but we've got to build you your amps for the tour, right? You're not taking my amps, right? Yeah. And so we custom built all his stuff to take on tour after we did the album. But yeah, I'm just saying is sometimes it was my gear, right? It was my personal amplifiers that he used on Eat 'Em and Smile, and for those Gypsy Rose and all those songs. Anyway, that was so. In that long answer to you, basically, I mean, I'm not going to say I was the one that brought in that sound, but I kind of did bring it in a big way. I mean, it was, you know what I'm saying? I mean, Eddie had his sound, and Eddie's sound is totally different. Eddie's sound is created by turning the voltage down on an amplifier and then cranking the input up up loud, and also using some kind of front end, like a lot of times they're wireless, is like AC/DC. That's a lot of their sound, is that wireless unit. It kind of is an active gain booster kind of thing, right? And so it's that lighting an amp wide open. It's a different sound. It has, I mean, Eddie's got a great sound, but it's not that over the top sounding like that dragster going, it's got a great distortion, bang, but it's a different beast, right? And not a lot of people can play that loud, even in big clubs. It's hard to play through stacks of Marshalls cranked up extremely loud, but anyway, that kind of gives you an idea. That's what started that whole thing. And then the session players really started the whole, like, Bradshaw switching and all that kind of grew out of the session players of Hollywood, because they already had that stuff. Because of sessions, you have to be ready. If the director goes, I want a Leslie sound, you got to hit a button, not go, hey, can we get a and right on the spot, commercial, we want this. Like, the big thing was that biphase, right? Everybody had the biphase, that big huge pedal on their pedal boards, because I did a lot of pedal boards, and that was the big thing. And I worked a lot with Bradshaw, because he would build the brain units, and then I'd wire up the the pedal boards, especially if a guy needed that much, switching, and Steve I and guys like that did have, where other guys want simple, less is more, two pedals maybe,
Yep.
because they don't want to think about it in the evening, they just go, right? But
And because you were one of the pioneers of the whole rack mount design movement, weren't
right,
you?
rack, the rack stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
The GP1000 was the first rack preamp that came on the market, and what gave me the idea was super hi-fi stuff was coming out, where it had a preamp and a power amp separate, like for stereo systems.
Yep.
And I started, and I started reading everywhere, and everybody's saying you can't put 12AX7s on their side; it just can't be done. And you know what? I said, to hell with the wind, and I mounted them on their side, and they worked just fine. I don't know what people were thinking, that you couldn't put a 12AX7 sideways, because I did that. GP was a one rack space, right? And so we came out, the very first one though mimicked my modified Fenders, and
Okay.
because we were doing a lot of Fenders, and I thought the Marshall guys would just stick with the Marshalls, and with it, we were going after a different market. Well, at that time, I now have several employees, and I have a sales force, and I start getting my sales forces coming in going, they don't want the Fender one. They want one that's like your modified Marshall. I said, really? He said, yeah, we're having a hard time selling this Fender one. I said, okay. So I go back in and I start tweaking, and came up with this thing that was totally different than any of my other builds, but it sound wise, it did the job. It sounded like, especially if you played through the big thing was, I remember when we started working with Zach Wild, um, we built him heads, and we had the GP1000s, because he had three of them. He had one set for clean, one rhythm, and one for solos, and he would switch back and forth between these three pre's, because they're basically single channel units. And so I remember the first time we show up at the first rehearsal for the No Rest tour, and he's playing, and we've got little amps, and we've got little stuff, and he's like, and he's on this 45-foot stage, and it sounds like a bee in the distance, but they're loud if you walk up to them, right? And he's like, this ain't gonna work. I want, volume. So we retool, and we use 800 watt aside H&H power amps going into 412 cabinets with EVs. So now he's got 1,600 watts of
Coming off the
power amps
stage.
coming off the stage. And when he would play, it was like the stage, womp 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 womp. The stage would move, and Ozzy would come over to his side and just turn around and go right back, like, no way, but did it sound amazing? Absolutely. I mean, it sounds just like the album, but just loud. Yeah, because during that tour, he used three of those preamps going through H&H power amps into cabinets. And he also had two heads that I custom built, because at the time we didn't have the new Metaltronix head ready yet. I was just building them inside. He brought me a couple Marshalls to gut, and we built that in, because later on we moved over to the M1000s, but the Metaltronix. But in the early part, he didn't have those, and just took the modified heads with that, because they were getting ready. They toured, right? It's wild, because Ozzy was the first band to take my gear over to Russia. I don't know if you remember that big gig in Russia where they brought like 6 or 8 of the top rock bands in America.
Yeah, yep.
They played that massive, like, it was like people for as far as you can see.
Was it like 300,000 or 150,000?
Yeah,
It was some massive number.
It was massive. And what's great is that I had custom built Zach these Metaltronix cabinets with gold grills, because they had metal grills, and you can see them on there. They're on the stage, and it was the first time that Metaltronix got introduced into Russia. So that was really cool. There's a couple classic shots where Ozzy's in front of my stacks of Metaltronix cabinets. Somewhere there's pictures around of that. It was like awesome. Somebody caught that picture, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, didn't mean to get on a tangent.
No. So is it a case of once you had built your own amps that the modded Marshall stuff tapered down and people were like, well, I can just buy exactly what I want from you off the get-go rather than...
You know what was wild is the modding did not slow down, but the heads went up. I mean, we were building 200 plus heads a month. And think about that during the 80s. That was, I mean,
yeah, geez.
If you think about that, we were running ads. You know, we were Marshall's only serious problem, right? And I had more stars than they did, more current stars. I mean, obviously Marshall's got an incredible history, but if you were looking at Guitar Player or Musicians or any of the magazines, we as Metaltronix had all the who's who of any album that you were listening to was on using my stuff. So when we would run an ad, like our classic shirts were Metaltronix built to blast, right? And that was because the blast was a takeoff on last, right? Built to last, built to blast, right? And they were freaking out because we were doing incredible at NAMM. Sales were just rocking. And you know, so what do? Their ad against me was a hand grenade that said, it doesn't have to be loud to be good. And it's like, I knew at that point that I was scaring the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you are noticing me, I'm causing grief, right? Yeah. You know, so yeah, that was a really interesting time. Yeah, we were doing both. I was still modifying heads, and still building. We were building. Well, I mean, to get into the story, so preamps were doing really well. We sold tens of thousands of these preamps because there was nothing in competition to it, and because Marshall didn't have anything like that, we actually had Marshall's distributor around the world because it wasn't in competition to Marshall. So they didn't sell my heads, but well, I didn't have heads at that time. They sold my preamps, right? And then ADA came out with their one rack space tube preamp. It had 100. It was MIDI. It had 128 programs, and it was okay. You could go from clean to distorted. You know, it didn't sound like my stuff, but it worked perfectly fine. But it had 128 presets, right? Mine had one sound. You just adjusted. You know, you could get multiple sounds, but it was one preamp basically. Yeah. And my sales, I'm not kidding you. The phone stopped. Boom. The day that was announced, the phone stopped ringing. And my sales first looked at me and went, dude, everybody wants that new, you know, ADA preamp. I said, uh-oh. So I immediately go into my office, and that's the birth of the M1000 because, hey, we got to shift gears.
Yeah.
I've got a crew to pay. You
can't sit on your hands. Yeah.
I can't sit on my hands. So I built the first M1000. It's timing wise, it was great. NAMM show was coming around. Boom, sold. They sold like hotcakes. We're back. Okay, right? And then while that's happening, one of my sales guys goes, do you know that amp that you have in your bench when you test GPs? I said, yeah, it's a solid state amp. He goes, that thing sounds amazing. It's like no other power amp I ever heard. I said, yeah, I designed it distorts. It's a solid state power amp. You know, most solid state power amps have 0.006% distortion. This thing had 20%, you know.
Wow.
it was a power amp that clipped, right? So I just put this thing together to put in my bench as a test thing. Didn't put much thought into it. And so anyway, off I go, and I designed the SP1000, which is two of them in a rack unit. And guess what? It became the #1 product to link with the ADA preamp. My power amp with their preamp. So now we started selling power amps at the number of them selling those preamps. So we started.
How good is that? You're benefiting of their
Oh
success
God,
as well.
it's like, dude, it was a good time. It was, like I said, it was one of those times in your life where it's like, yeah, hit that again,
Yeah, just
and
all lined up.
yeah, I mean, it was an exciting time because we're also working with all these big groups, and we're making sure their tours are happening, making sure their albums are happening, and so it was fun. It was a different time in music. It was definitely different than it is now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well, the shift of music. I mean, then do you remember when that shift occurred? Was it the grunge coming in that saw the collapse of the Guitar Hero sound and it all changed again, or do you remember, when?
well, the grunge, what that did was crush the big budgets. See, people used to get $500,000 deals to record an album, right? They'd get, I mean, $500,000, $250,000. I mean, that was normal, and which is a lot,
It's
to
a
go
lot of
into a
money.
studio.
It's a lot
Yeah,
now, and it was a lot
it was
back
a
then.
lot in the 80s, going into the 90s. So what happened is you get a band like Nirvana that puts out a #1 huge selling album for under 20 grand.
Yeah.
So what happens is you get these big directors coming back going, they did that for 20 grand. Why am I approving $500,000? Because it's true, there was a lot of waste. I mean, I'd be in a session and they just didn't feel like it today. They showed up and it's like everybody going home, right?
Right.
And it's still costing $1,500 an hour, for all the people and all the stuff. You know what I'm saying?
But it
It's
didn't
still,
matter because there was so much money around. No
there was
one's
so
under the
much
pump.
money. Yeah, it's like, oh
Yep.
well, we didn't get it today, so off we go. Whereas when you're under a $10,000 budget, it's like everybody's practiced, everybody knows what
Yeah,
they're
you
going to
make
do.
it work.
You make it work, and so yeah, that was, I saw that death knell. I mean, all of a sudden it was like, no, we're not giving any more unless you're so huge, Madonna or some, I'm saying you'll get a big budget.
Yeah.
But for any of the rock bands that normally got big budgets, that was over. And then well, also you had in the grunge market, you had the anti-culture, right? Because if you looked good, played good, dressed good, you were the Antichrist in that anti-culture, right? It was like, that grunge was the opposite. Not that it didn't play well, it was just the mindset of they were against it. It was like, no, and there was some great everybody dressed up in the 80s, and there were some great players. There was a lot of horrible ones, but there was a lot of great players. Just because they dressed like that, they could play,
Yeah, and it sounded unreal.
And they sounded unreal, and live they were amazing.
Yep.
That was the big thing after the 90s, is that you'd go to a concert, you'd be really disappointed because they had used Pro Tools to create this band in the recording.
So it's not what you saw when you turned up.
No, when you went live, you're like, that wasn't the band and that caused, live shows to go to become crumbling. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that kind of fed it. It was the perfect storm, right? It was the lower budgets. It was the change of, because if you notice, when all that happened, all those guitar players from Hollywood that you knew from all these bands, they just went to country, and country. You see, all of a sudden, country goes from twang to bang
to
and
like country
solos.
rock.
country
Right.
rock, and you start looking at who was that. Oh, that was so and so from that band. They realized they just shifted gears because they could still have their hair, they could still wear nice clothes. No, they're not wearing chains and
Yeah, and leather
but
pants, and yeah,
leather pants,
yeah,
but they could still go out and rock. You know what
yep,
I'm saying? Like Kid Rock. Come on, I mean,
yeah, yeah. I never thought of it
you,
like that. Yeah,
oh yeah, so a lot of them went off and did that, and it's because if you kind of watch the trends, it all happened around the same time, and but yeah, so it was like it was a big change. I mean, we all kind of went, you know,
yeah.
uh, because the market started changing. Then
And did it
because
impact yourself in terms of
Oh,
a
of course,
business sense?
of course it did, because now, okay, so the way it used to work in Hollywood, which was really interesting, is you had the top players that were making serious cash, right? And every year, it used to blow my mind, every year they wanted a new system, even though their system sounded absolutely amazing the year before, but they're making so much money, their accountants are telling, you got to spend money, which we didn't mind.
No.
It's like, whole, because we get a whole string of them. Oh, they get the list. This guy's all new. Build them all new. New
Wow.
rack effects, new everything, new. You just name it, new, right? Well, then what would happen is then they would sell their stuff to the next tier guy, right? That was in Hollywood at a much cheaper rate because they didn't care. They're getting paid by their for the new stuff, and then that next tier would sell that to the next tier. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Gear
it was
would
a
just flow
filtering
down.
down.
It would filter down, and even the first level at some point would have gotten the rig that was a rig from years later, but it's still an a rig. It still sounds amazing. So that came to a halt because when the cream stopped coming to the A groups, they started holding on to their gear and not moving it down. And so you started seeing a drastic change. So all the new guys that were coming up into that system were not able to get these lower, cheaper rigs. So they started looking for cheaper, and that's when the whole Chinese market took off. And
Right.
we saw that starting to happen at the NAMM show because you started originally the Chinese stuff was on the lower fourth level on the ground, at the trade show, right?
Ah,
Nobody even paid attention to them. And then all of a sudden they started moving into the higher floors, and we started realizing, uh-oh, they're taking over the whole market because of the cost.
yeah,
It's not a case of sound; it's a case of cost. It was
yeah.
just I can get this cheaper, and you're seeing that now. I mean, there's companies out there. I'm not going to name them, but that's their whole idea is to make it out of China and make it for nothing.
Yeah, and
And
unserviceable. That's a throwaway society. Something breaks, throw it
throw it away,
away.
buy another one,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
I literally there's some of this gear that you can't fix it because who's going to work on it for $10 an hour,
yeah,
right? To even make it affordable. You know what I'm saying? Is like,
yeah.
because some of the stuff you're like, you might put hours and hours into it, and then what are you going to do? Charge the guy more than he can go buy another one? It's like, for me, when I look at that stuff, it's like, no, I'm sorry, I don't touch that stuff. I can't help you on
Yeah,
that.
that's
And
fair enough.
the people I know that do touch that stuff are belly aching to me all the time. I lost my butt.
Yeah.
I lost my butt on that. And
Yep.
they go, what do you do? I don't touch that
And
stuff.
exactly, because once you touch it, you own it. And now,
That's right.
yeah, and you'll often get the old, oh well, it wasn't doing that before you touched it. Oh, here we
Oh,
go.
oh yeah. One of those classics, and it's a great amp. But the old Voxes, the really old Voxes, the AC30s. Okay,
Yep.
they're one of those amps because they use solid
Oh,
core wire, and it's one of those things that just taking it out of the box breaks wires.
Oh, if you look at it the wrong way, now here we go.
You work on, so I stopped even touching those, because it would be one of those situations where they sent you an amp and you just took it apart to see what's wrong. Well, it didn't do that before.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do anything.
Yep. And now it's your problem at your time, your cost.
Exactly. So, great amp, AC30s, incredibly cool amplifier. But the way they built them, they're really fragile. Now, they seem to be okay when they're all left in the chassis, but man, you pull them out and you bend the main part of the chassis is like an L, and they bend those wires like with solid core in that L. And then if it's flexing like this, it's like, you flex a solid core wire, it breaks, right?
Yeah, well, throw a bit of heat, a bit of vibration, and then
it's done. But anyway,
Wow.
So same thing. But go ahead.
The revival now, it's the market's a buzz. You've got amp builders are on trend. That sound, has come back. The high gain sound is back, and it's only taken Marshall 50 odd years to build an amp that has the mods that everyone was doing into it.
That's kind of a sore subject, because they went and took three of the top, I'm in that list, three of the top guys modded amps and basically are knocking it off and putting it on the market.
Really? So I was going to ask that. Is it what they've done, is it a case of they went looking into...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the mod market's huge. I mean, everybody, Friedman, I think there's a Friedman model that it's like everybody that did, mods. Now I'm not hearing like, any of these amps are changing anybody's life, but, they were sold to China. So now they've got a whole different, there's a whole different system. Once it's not Marshall anymore. It's
run by accountants, isn't it? And it filters down that way.
Yeah, it's like all the companies. Fender's now owned by a holding company, and all these different companies are owned by holding companies. And I understand at some point the original people go, I'm tired of this. Mesa Boogie sold. I mean, all these people sell out after a while, and I get it. I get it. You get to the point where you've put so much time into it, and it becomes a numbers game, because it's just cheaper, and you get kind of burnt on the being cheaper.
It's never a good race. There's never the winner there doesn't get a trophy. That's I don't see why people keep competing in it.
Well, like one of the examples of that, which was a learning lesson for me, was when I went to design for Ampeg. I designed the VL series. There was the 501, 502, and there was the 1001, 1002. One's a single channel, one's a dual channel. And at one point, the guy comes, the owner of the company comes through, and he's like, "Oh, you got to take $20 out of that." And it's like, what? He goes, because I originally designed it with a full tube effects loop, and because that's what I do with amps, He's like, nope, you got to pull money out. So I literally had to chop half of the tube effects loop out and make it solid state. And that's the only bummer about that amp. That amp sounds like the 502 and the 1002 sound absolutely amazing. Every time one comes in to get refurbed, I play it, and it's like, oh, that amp is just magical. And but that's the only downside, is that effects loop. I tell people, just don't use the effects loop, because it's bypassable on the back. But it's totally not because of me, but because Bean Counter's going, we got to cut. They want a certain price, so that they can sell it for a certain price, and that's just the way it goes. Where I threw caution out the wind, okay, was my last amp, the M2000. I went way the other direction. I said, I'm going to build myself a Bugatti, and it's going
Wow.
to be my swan song, and it's going to be the best thing I've ever done in my life. Even though I designed them, every part was custom made for me, from the transformers. The box is made out of a block of aircraft aluminum milled out with a 7 or 8 axis aircraft machine that milled all the whole block out to this aluminum. It looks like a wood case around it, but it's not. It's all aluminum.
Oh,
And
wow.
every part, the best of the best of the best. I mean, everything, even the control pots, because I did this concentric thing. Those are 1968 Bakelite knobs off of 60s jazz bass. Remember those concentric Bakelite
Yeah.
knobs? Yeah, I scoured the world and bought up a bunch of those. That's what
Wow.
the knobs are. And I had to hand make the pots, because they don't make pots like this where there's, because one channel is the front row of knobs and the second channel is the back row of knobs. And anyway, needless to say, the ending cost of this amp ended up being a lot,
Yeah.
and it cost me a lot, you know. Um, I mean, just to give you an idea, it cost, just to mill that head and have it treated by the aircraft company. Just the box cost me $1,500 to get made. My cost.
And that's your cost.
That's my cost. But I wanted this
Wow.
thing that was never done before. Like those $20,000, $30,000 super hi-fi stereo systems.
Yep.
They use solid milled blocks of aluminum.
Right. So you were
Right.
making this to be the equal in that space.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I wanted something that was just never, and I understand why nobody else has done it, because if I hadn't made friends with this aerospace guy who had the machinery, I had to pay a CAD guy to take my drawings and put it into a whatever 7/8 space milling, right? And this guy had the ability to do the machining, and it was wild, because it was, you know, it's just sad because they charge you so much for that aluminum, but
Yep.
they don't give you anything back for the shavings.
Ah, so the
Because
right.
I have tons of shavings, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, there's more shavings than there's product. Can I get
Yeah.
a
Surely it can be melted
kickback?
down and reused.
No, it's all
They're not
full
in
of
that
that oil.
market.
It's all full of that oil, right? Because that oil that they spray in it.
Oh, right.
Anyway, but yeah, I took it the opposite direction with this. Is I I went the other way, and I did 2 special runs, and this is the last run. I'm not building them again. And
Oh, so this is it.
when
You're going to do one more run.
no, this is it.
Oh,
What's left in stock?
so what
What's
you've got left is that's it.
That's it. There's no more after I sell what's in stock, because they cost me so much money to build,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it was that, you do that thing where, every company has their swan song piece of gear that they go,
Just like a
well, if you
work of
want
passion.
that, yeah, here it is. I mean, sound wise, it's amazing. There's nothing like it. It's absolutely amazing sounding. Um, does everything, has everything that I've ever wanted an amp to do. And you can check it out. It's on my website, leejackson.com. All the Metaltronix stuff is up there, and you can get better, close pictures, and there's also videos, you can listen to it and that kind of stuff. But anyway,
Yes.
so I understand both sides of that coin, right?
Yep.
I mean, I understand building stuff to hit a price point, because I understand it's hard as an artist. You're not
Yeah.
making a lot,
You
right?
spend a lot
And
and it's hard to make a lot. Yep.
it is, and I learned that as a guitar player in Hollywood. That unless you have hit songs, you're living on ketchup sandwiches.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
I'm serious. It's like you start going, wow, this, I love this. I love playing, but without a hit song, you're starving, and
Yeah.
I get it, and you know, um,
It's unfortunate that's how the world sort of values it, and because there's an Australian actor that made a good comment. He's an older guy, and someone said to him, "What's your advice to someone getting into acting?" And he said, "My advice now is build your life around being able to do it. Don't come in expecting to be an actor and make money. Get yourself a job, a trade, a career where you can leave that and go and do acting." Because that's
right.
the only way you're going to enjoy what you do and still make money to live the life you want to live. Because it's that hard to make money in the arts. And
It is. I mean,
yeah,
you truly do have to follow your bliss. I
yep,
know that's a hard one, and people, you need to do that anyway, just because of your own life, right? I mean, nobody wants to do something that's drudgery,
yeah,
8 hours, 9 hours a day forever.
exactly. I know. Yep, totally. Yep,
I mean, um,
yep. You
it
question
is
what's it
true.
for? Yeah,
Yeah, it is true that if you really put your time into, um, you know, um, what you want to accomplish, doors do open. It's the weirdest thing that, like, a lot of times for me, it's like I'm going, wow, that was useless. And then a phone call comes in out of nowhere. And it's not even the people that you're talking to or working with. It's like the universe went out and just touched somebody and said, okay, it's your
oh,
turn. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
A lot of times it's not the people that I'm pushing a project, or, you know what I'm saying?
yep.
Or I'm
It's just
going,
something
let's,
else happens that's meant
yeah,
to be.
it's
Yep.
just, that you're congruent. So the other doors open, right? They say there's no luck, it's just prepared at the right time,
Yeah.
right? It's because the door opens all the time. Are you prepared, right? That's the big thing. A lot of times
Mm.
a door opens and you're not prepared. And
Yeah. It's a
that
beautiful way of
then
thinking of
then
it.
then it's like, that's bad luck, right?
Yes.
good
Yeah. Yeah.
good luck. It's like, good luck. I got called to do this gig and I've been practicing, so I played really well. Good luck. I haven't
Yeah.
played my guitar in 6 months. I got called for a gig. I didn't play very well. Bad luck, right?
Yeah. True. Very true. Very good way of looking at that.
Same situation, right? It's
Yeah.
just how you're prepared. And but yeah. So
And
I've learned my go ahead.
sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all.
The the current obviously you've got this amp that you once that's done is done, but are you still doing other things? Is there still this innovative mindset and creative that
Oh
you're
yeah.
making and wanting and still chasing, and that's still very much in the daily routine for you?
Oh, absolutely. Well, just like I said, everything is based on what I want, right? I'm serious. It's
Yep.
like I come up with something, and my latest one is the Bad Kitty. And this came about. I was listening to I forgot the guy's name. Is I'm really into engineering, so I mean I work on projects where I engineer stuff, and so I'm always open to hearing somebody's new idea, or and I was listening to the guy that worked on uh uh oh god, the James Bond movie, the
Oh, okay.
okay, the one where Jack White played on, da 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 da, No Time to Die, right? Which is
Okay.
that song. And so after I got done watching his thing, I went and got the track and pulled it up in my studio and listened to it, right? And I was listening to it and I was going, man, I love that guitar sound. So I start digging into it and I find out that nobody really wants to talk about it, but I do find some people that do tell me that Jack used a couple different fuzz pedals plugged into each other to create that sound on that.
Ah,
So, because I seriously, if somebody would have said, "Hey, so and so makes that pedal," I would have just went that bought that pedal for myself. I'm serious. I would have bought that pedal for myself and said, "Hey, there's the sound. I
there's the
like
sound
it.
you wanted. Yep.
Sound I wanted." It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to build that pedal to sell to people. I just wanted that sound. I loved it. So anyway, so I sat down. I usually do on my pad and paper, and I start working out ideas on what I could do to recreate that sound. And had a couple experiments, and freaking I nailed it, and I figured out how to recreate that sound. And there's a switch that basically doubles up the fuzz to get, if you want the exact sound on No Time to Die, you can do it with the switch up and the single notes, that da 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 da. And but other than that, you can turn that off, and it's a whole nother sounding kind of fuzz. It's not, it can get that super fuzzy fuzz, but it also gets this awesome distortion sound that's just for, just a straight up distortion. And I can honestly say that every one that somebody touches, it's gone.
Wow.
I've even had, like, some of these session country players here in town. I'm in Austin, Texas, that I would never expect, that I say, hey, you want to check out this new pedal? And they play it and they're like, I want that. So yes, I'm still inventing stuff. A couple of years ago, I designed, there's this company called Shinai. They make pedals, and I designed all their product line, everything, all their Univibes, and they're still selling. After selling a lot of product, the owner of the company decided that he was just done with, at the peak. I'm not kidding you. He calls me and says, I'm just not, I'm gonna do a vacation. And one of the pedals, though, that he was selling one of my pedals, which is called the big one. And he goes, I'll keep I'll keep building those for you, and we'll keep shipping those. And he's still shipping the big one. And the big one is how that came about was, I'd been designing all of the guy's name is Bob that owns Shinai. I'd been designing all of his pedals. He has a bunch, he has a bunch of different pedals. But Shinai is famous for the Univibe, right? That's what Shinai made in the 70s, was that Univibe pedal. And I had to learn everything about Univibes because he wanted a new one with new features, and it did well for him. He sold a lot of these pedals. They're called vibros. But anyway, at one point he goes to me, he says, hey man, why don't you just design a pedal and I'll put it in my lineup, and I'll just, we'll work out a deal. I said, oh, okay. So I sat back and I'm thinking, I don't want to do a distortion pedal, because I had just designed all of his distortion pedals, and I don't want to do this kind of pedal. Definitely not an octave pedal or a Univibe pedal. And then I started thinking about one of my very first pedals that became popular in the 80s, which was my gain pedal. And so I started going down that road, thinking about that. And I started even working on ideas of doing it like vintage, right? Like doing all the circuitry like old timey. And I tried that. Wow. And nothing, I wasn't happy with any of it. Well, during that same time, again, remember timing, I was modifying high-end studio gear, 1073s, API 512s, 312s, all this stuff I was doing for guys, around. I mean, I don't want to name names, but a lot of the big players here in town, I work on their gear and their studio gear. And so I started learning the topography of why does that preamp sound like that, right? Yeah. So then I decided what I would do is I would pack in this little box a super high-end pre, like a multi-$1,000 pre. And what I did was I mounted all the parts like an old-timey transistor radio, like where they used to stand up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So I mounted all the parts, and what I did is I preset all the controls other than the gain knob. So on the outside, it looks like a gain pedal. Okay. If you turn the knob all the way down, it's unity, click on, click off.
Yep.
And then I came up with a way to get this thing to put out 30 dB a gain, it was freaking awesome. It's wow. Amazing out of a 9-volt system. not a battery. You need it has a battery place, but it'll kill a battery in an hour. You want to use it, but anyway, what it does is it's amazing because what it looks like is this simple pedal that's black with a knob and a switch, and you're thinking, oh, gain pedal. No, it's a high-end mic pre, and what it does, and my favorite thing is to plug it in and let somebody play with it off, and without them noticing, I turn it on and they're playing and they're enjoying themselves. And all I have to do, and we're talking no gain, just going through it. All I have to do is while they're physically looking, I turn it off. And they go, no. And I turn it on. And they're going, no. And I unplug their instrument and I plug directly in the amp and I say play, and they play. And I put it on bypass and I play through it and I say play, right? Sounds the same, right? Okay. And then I turn it on and they play. And then I turn it off. And it's what's going on physics wise is the same thing like okay, when you have like a U47 microphone, very nice expensive microphone, it really doesn't sound great until it goes through a 1073. The melding of those two products are the magic.
Not individually, they have to work as a pair.
Right. The U47 by itself, it sounds better than a cheap mic, but when you plug it into 512 or 1073 or 1084 or something like that, there's this magic that all of a sudden that mic gets big and full and luscious and everything that you love about that microphone. So that's what this does to your guitar playing. You can use gain if you want to gain it up. If you feel like it, you can add some gain in there. But most people are using it just in a lot of people, Eric Johnson used it on one of his acoustic tours, just plugging into it, just going through it because it made the acoustic big. Didn't use it for gain. Julie Assange used it for a lot of tours. We even custom made him some Julie Assange. Julie, what's his name? God, sorry, not Assange. Julia Lang. Anyway, the acoustic player. And
okay.
But anyway, yeah, it's so they're still selling it. They're expensive. They are expensive because they're very expensive to make and the components are expensive. But they do, if you've tried it, it's kind of hard not to use it because once you hear it in your system, you're so used to that. You're used to the sound. But Ricky Phillips from Styx, when he went to a European tour, all he took was his bass and a big one and plugged it into the PA system at wherever they were doing their live show, So yeah, it's got a thing. It's got a sound. There's plenty of videos out there with people showing and talking about it. And you can if you go to my website, there's a link. It takes you to his website to purchase them because I'm not selling them, but I'm promoting my own product. He's selling, but yeah. There's a lot of stuff. If you like I said, if you go to my website, there's a lot of direction you can check stuff out. And even my podcast, about my podcast, right? Friday Night Feedback. Okay. I did at one point I decided, you know what, I'm going to contact all these rock stars that I played with, right?
Yeah.
Not played with, but worked with. And I put together this podcast called Friday Night Feedback, and I put it on hold. I did a bunch, and I put it on hold because the hardest part is getting everybody lined up. I need, just to get that date in, right? A lot of times they want to do it, but times don't work out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
how that,
I know.
You know how
everyone's
that is.
busy. Yep.
Exactly, and you got to figure out how to fit it in. But if you go to YouTube, like Steve Vai, all these guys are on there, and like Steve's really gracious. I mean, he pretty much says that Eat 'Em a Smile sound was totally created by me, and I was like, wow, Steve, thank you. That was very, a lot of these guys, you don't know how they're gonna react, and so far everybody that's been on the show has been just a sweetheart. And I've talked to more Yeah, I've talked to more guys. I'm going to line up like another 10 and I'll do another string of them because it's a lot of energy. I do research and, you know,
Yeah, it's a lot of
to
time. It takes a
a
lot of
lot
time.
takes a lot of time because you got it, you know, because there was things I learned like I interviewed Mark Andes, that bass player, and I'd known Mark for a lot of years. I remember him back in Heart. He was in Heart during all the big Heart years,
Oh, okay.
and I didn't know he was on 5 different platinum bands. I did not know he was in Canned Heat. He was in one of the biggest bands in history. They were out during they were bigger than Led Zeppelin. Actually, Led Zeppelin opened for them.
Wow.
Oh God, I'm pulling a blank. But anyway, he had 5. As I was pulling up this information, I was like, wow, dude, you've been in all these huge bands, you know, because he does. If you know Mark, he doesn't talk about himself. He's not going to sit there and, you know, I've been in so and so. He's just very quiet and really, you can once you know, you can tell that he was the bass player because he's got a very unique sound. But he's on one of the shows, and but anyway,
Yeah, interesting. That's
that's
great that you've got that, documenting that history that forever is there for the fan to
well,
come back
if
and
you know,
experience.
just I was thinking to myself, you know, before they died, like one of the things I was so bummed when Eddie died, right? I was
Yeah.
like, no, because he would have been one. I worked with Eddie on Cardinal Knowledge, that album,
Okay.
and I was around not a lot, but around enough, you know, and you know we struck up a pretty good friendship, and I just, you know, it's just really a bummer that yeah, how we met each other is I'm back. This is back in the day when you had those phones with a answering machine, right?
Yeah.
And I'm laying there, and Saturday morning, and the phone rings. I'm just not going to answer it, and I'm at home, and the phone rings, and it's the first time I'd ever heard Eddie's real voice. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's really high. You would not expect he doesn't have like a low voice. He has a very high voice. And I thought it was somebody pranking me, right? I thought it was a friend. You know, he's like, hi, this is Eddie Van Halen. You know, Zach Wild gave me your phone number. I'm really in trouble. My number 1 amp has blown up and we're working on this album. Will you please call me back? And at first I'm like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's Eddie Van Halen. No way. And the more and more I thought about it, you know, I better call that number. So I called it, and Valerie answered. She goes, hold on. And he comes on. He goes, please help me out. I said, sure. So um, he comes over and brings me his number, the amp, the one that did all the albums, right?
The one that everyone talks about, that
The
wonders
one
the
that everybody
mystique.
talks about. Yeah. And he
Yep.
burned the Alpha transformer up. And I luckily at that time, there was this old guy that lived in the heart of Hollywood and rebuilt transformers in his house. He used his oven to bake them. Dude,
Wow.
let me tell you, it was rough. You walk into this house and there was transformers and crap everywhere. And anyway, I don't know what country he was from, but he was an immigrant that knew how to wind transformers. So I bring him the transformer and I said, look, you got to just rewind it exactly because it's very special. So he rewinds it, and I get a call, whatever amount of time. And then at the same time, you know, Eddie hands me 4 of these Sylvania 60 A7s in a box, like presenting to me like, okay, these are holy grail. Make sure that you put these in the amp when you get it done, because that's a big part of the sound of these Sylvania 60 A7s. And I said, sure, no problem. You know? So I get it all. I get the transformer. I get it put back in. I get it all put together and tested, and I brought it out to his house. They were working on front car knowledge. Put it in that room. They record amps in the room. You know, you see those pictures of him all the time where he's in there working on guitars. His little workshop. That's where right there in the corner is where the amp cabinet sits. Even though there's a playroom, a bathroom, and then they've got a bathroom the size of something in a gymnasium, right? It's got 5 or 6 stalls, so everybody can go at the same time if they want, right? And then the studio starts then after that. So this cabinet's like way the far. So they start up. I hung out there for a while, and then I walk in to the cutting, not the cutting, but the mixing room, and the classic sound is coming through the speakers, and it was awesome. It was fun to work with him during that, and we later, I started bringing amps over there. I did do a modded amp for him, and it was just at that time he was really getting heavy with PV, and they were doing stuff for him, right? And um, but so it never went anywhere past that. But I just stayed a friend, and it was great guy. I would have loved to have put him on the show and just talked about all the stuff that was going on during that period of time, and
Yeah,
the
that'd be
crazy.
so special, and that's why I think it's important to do what you're doing, and what I try and do as well is to get those unscripted, informal conversations of the insight from the past. Because even one player that I love is Gary Moore.
Oh
There's
yeah,
nothing.
absolutely. Yeah.
There's a couple of media style scripted interviews, but there's nothing that's him casually sitting there just talking about, oh, I plugged this in and I tried this and I bought this from this shop and I used.
Right.
That doesn't exist. And to a Gary Moore fan, that would just mean the world.
Absolutely, because you find out, they say you never want to meet your idol. So the best thing you do is just be nice,
Yeah.
just be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
It's like so I get it. I absolutely get it. That's excellent. What's funny is last week, not to step on this, but last week I get contacted, Buckethead.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he contacts me and goes, I'm going to be in town, can we please hang out? I said sure. I was worried that he was going to be in full dress, right?
Yeah.
And I would have to talk to him in full dress, and
Yeah.
thank goodness no,
No?
he
Oh,
wasn't.
that's
He
good.
was not in full dress. And he's a fan. I didn't know. He's like a big fan. He was like, oh man, this is awesome, and he wants me to custom build him some stuff, and I said sure. uh, he was a big he is a big Paul Gilbert fan, obviously, because Paul taught him how to play guitar.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
for the longest time we all thought, is that Paul? Because he plays a lot like Paul, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's like,
But
well, we
that's
haven't
where
seen
it came
Paul and
from.
him at the same time, because they're both tall and lanky, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's like they look, their hands and stuff, they look a lot the same. It's like, but no, it's not Paul. I can tell
It's
you
not.
that. Yeah.
the
But
the
anyway,
the other question I wanted to quiz you on is a couple of, I suppose, more techie ones. At this point in time, your favorite tubes, because that's obviously a discussion that a lot of people have this love-hate thing with.
wow. Are,
It,
are
it,
you ready? Are you ready for this one? Here we
I'm
go.
ready. I'm ready to go in head first.
Well, okay. Well, we first off, there is nothing at all like NOS tubes.
Right.
Nothing. And being an amp builder, obviously you can't run a company on NOS tubes because of the pure cost, right?
Yeah.
So you start figuring out what's the next best thing that you can do. And we'll circle back around to NOS, but let's just say so for the longest time until the whole Russia thing happened, one tube factory makes all the tongue saws, Sovtecs, Mullards. I mean, the list is huge, right?
Yeah.
Electroharmonics. They're all made at one factory, and the difference is they are spec'd out differently. They definitely have different specs, but they were all made in one factory. And so when the very first clamp came down, and I was just in the middle of a production of amps, And I literally raced around the world and bought up everything that was available.
Wow.
Seriously, people, I would sit there and say, how many do you have? I want them all. EL34s. I was like, because I really loved those early Mullard EL34s. They really work really well. They sound great in that kind of output stage. And so during that period of time when there wasn't one available anywhere, China stepped up and changed their name on a bunch of product and came out with their own tubes. I'm sorry, they are crap. And a lot of people, the only thing that China tube-wise makes that is a really cool tube is their high gain 12AX7. They've been making it since I started amps in the 80s.
Oh,
And
really? That long? I didn't realize
yeah,
that they'd been making them over there for that long.
yeah. And if you test them, like Tube Doctor used to sell them, and you'd pay the premium, but he would test them, right? And so if you test them and get the low noise, blah 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 blah, amazing tube. Okay, but that's it. That's the only one. The next thing that I'm going to get a lot of hate for is I cannot stand JJ tubes. They're the dullest. They have no impact. Now their output tubes are fine. Their EL34s are fine. They work just fine, but their preamp tubes, they're just dull. And I don't know what causes it, but I just don't like them. And so the positive thing is that Mike from Sovtech, who owns the distribution of all those tubes, figured a way to get this stuff back into the country. It's a little bit more expensive, but you still can get the Mullards, the Sovtechs, the what's the other one? I said it earlier.
Well,
Electro-Harmonics. That's a good 12AX7. That's a great 6v6. But the Mullard EL34, what's the other? Tungsol, yes, Tungsol. But it's the same thing, same company, same place. Tungsol is a great tube. I like it on the preamp tubes. I like the Tungsols sound great, 12AX7s. Again, with all this stuff, you kind of have to, pick through them because it's just like any production. Some are quiet, some are noisy, some are high gain, some are low gain. That's just the way it is when they come out of the box. Unless you have somebody
pre-testing
them. Yeah. And the problem is, by what I can see, and I can't say for 100%, but like I used to buy a lot of tube amp doctor TADs, and they used to be all the other companies. He'd test them just like Groove Tubes doesn't make tubes. They just buy large quantities and test them. But he went over to that Chinese tube. I can see it in his product when I bought a bunch of tube amp doctor. Now whether he's going back, I don't know, and I can't say, but during that period, I know he has to keep his company going, so he just went with these Chinese tubes. And but so the only thing I say about TAD is, if you can find somebody that'll pre-test so that you don't have to buy 10 tubes and use 2, say,
yeah, which you would think, with all the engineering, the manufacturing, the precision that we have today, and especially if someone's got the old machines, that there could be this hybrid that could come together of old machines with modern refinements and precision to create the best thing we've seen. But it doesn't seem like anyone's doing that.
No, let me tell you. So a couple of years ago, I was doing a run of amps, and I just got this hair. I thought, I went into my private collection and pulled out a bunch of NOS, brand new GEs, RCAs, and I changed them out on my amp. And it was like, the angels sang, the birds tweet. It's like,
really,
oh,
night and day difference.
Oh, there's no comparison at all. The real tube, the real NOS tube, has a 3D dimension that these tubes, doesn't matter who makes them, does not have. They have a 2D, but not a 3D. There's not this depth. And I've proven this over and over to other musicians that have, said, no way. And I pop the tube out right there in front of them, pop the other tube in, and they play, and they're like, oh no. Like there's this really hot guitar player here named Jake Andrews, who's got the most incredible vintage tweed Fender collection, which has got NOS tubes in it. I keep telling him, you better buy some NOS tubes because they're all going away. And there won't, they keep going in price. I mean, when I first started buying, I did buy some 12AX7s, Jans, Joint Army Navies, which are GE, and I was paying $75 each in quantity. And now that same tube is $150 each and going up.
Oh,
150
wow.
bucks for a 12AX7. A set of black plate GEs right now, 6L6s, $800 for a quad. $200 a tube, and that's if you can get them. That's if there's going to be a point where it's like, nope. And the sound difference. Perfect. One last perfect example is because the other people that are experiencing this is the super high-end pro studio market. Okay, in like a U47, or they have brand new ones. You can buy brand new ones from the company, but they don't sound anywhere like the vintage ones, right? And there was this guy, and you can find it on the internet, where he literally, and the guy had balls. He literally took an original one and a new one from the same company, and he exchanged parts from the old. They sound different, right? It was obvious. The vintage one sounded amazing, and the new one just sounded okay. And he went and he changed parts. And the biggest difference between the two units was the tube.
Wow.
When he changed the tube, because they're EF86s, not to get so technical, but EF86s are being made by Sovtech. They're made in the factory, but they are not the EF86 from the 70s. Not at all. Not at all. And if you're lucky to find an EF86, like an original one, they're going for really prime. And there's, so if you could buy like a new, Telefunken mic, pull out the EF86, go get a NOS EF86, put it in it, and now your mic sounds absolutely amazing. So the same thing is going on with tube amplifiers. It's that different. I don't mean to be discouraging. I mean, you can do a gig, everything sounds fine. You can use a modern day tube and you're going to get through the night just fine. But if you got used to hearing that sound, like when you did have that tube in there, you'll be like, yeah, it doesn't sound like that anymore. Especially like an old Fender Tweed, which has only got like 3 or 4 tubes in it, right? So every tube is like so critical to its sound that just changing one tube can make that amp sound like God or sound flat, right? I mean,
yep.
Like I said, output tubes are not as critical as your preamp tubes. I'm finding the output tubes are working just fine. But if you could find a set of Sylvania 60A7s, good luck. You might pay $300 a tube. That'd be like $1,200 for just 4 output tubes. And the scary thing is, if you were a serious player, like playing all the time, right? Preamp tubes can last years. Output tubes, you can fry a set in a year of constant playing.
So really, it becomes a very cherished specialty item that doesn't to get used every night.
Yeah, it's like use it for recording that album because you're going to really hear it with that mic stuck up against it.
Yeah.
But when you go out and do your gigs, you can use, pull those tubes out, put them, and go find a nice set. A company that does an incredible job of noise and matching is that company. Their wholesale company is called CE Distribution. They're based out of Arizona. They came up with a new system. I went out there and checked it out. They have a new matching system that's absolutely amazing. Some genius in their network came up with it, and it matches everything. And their tubes are just absolutely amazing. They sound great. They're matched great, and they'll do that. They'll match whatever tubes you buy from them. But they have a their normal store is called Tubes and More. But like where you don't have to be a wholesale. The CE, you have to be a builder. You have to be like
to the trade. Yeah.
Yeah, they supply Fender. Fender's just down the street from them, so they supply Fender. They supply a lot of parts for a lot of the boutique companies, and their tube stuff's really good. I I would highly recommend them. I know it's far from Australia,
Yeah, but if it's worth the for something so special, you probably don't mind paying a bit more, paying for the freight and waiting 3 weeks for it to turn up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that's getting so scary now is shipping. Everything's gone so through the roof. That's the biggest part is when I talk to somebody that wants to send me something to get it custom done. Everything's great until we figure out what the shipping is. There was a guy recently. There was a guy in Ireland that contacted me that he wanted an amp built just like I built for Paul Gilbert or DeMartini or any of those, one of those amps just like it. He was going to send me a vintage amp and he wanted me to completely he asked me, will you build it exactly? I'll build it just like I built it in the 80s. And we were fine on the price, what I was going to charge. And then he starts figuring out what shipping's going to cost. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like way more in shipping than anything else. The shipping is, even here in America, shipping is gone. I literally sold something on Reverb and shipped it 2 blocks away from me, a little box. It was $28. Yeah. Just a little box across. I mean, I could have thrown it almost to the person, and it's like, wow, it's just gotten so that, our costs have gotten so out of hand.
Well, I can imagine, like, if it's a full-size head, like a Marshall head, that's a big unit and it weighs a lot.
Weighs a lot, absolutely.
So, yeah. Is the little Studio series, do you find them a great platform, like the Studio 800 and the Studio Vintage? Are they a good platform to do mods to?
Oh, well, yeah, what are you talking about? Like the
little Marshall 20-watt.
The combos, 20 watters, no, because there's just not enough oomph to them to make. I mean, I just say put a pedal on it, Right. I mean, none. So any of the JCM 800 stuff, as long as it's not channel switching, little combos and stuff, they're great. The single channel ones.
Okay.
They're all great. When you start getting into the channel switching stuff, now they put a lot of solid state in the amp. Like the 900s are the worst amp on the earth. It's more solid state than it is tube. I get calls all the time where people are like, hey, will you custom build my 900? No, I won't even touch it.
Really?
Because I'd have to literally tear it down to the chassis and just use the transformers. Because it's all solid state. I mean, just go look up schematic. It's solid state all the way to the effects loop, and then it's got a couple tubes in it, but it's just a solid state amp.
And is that for all of them? The 900 had the SLX, and you don't like all of them.
No, none of the 900 series, even all the brand new stuff. I'm sorry, it sounds like bees. Sounds like rocks in a can, or BBs in a can. To me, the distortion is just,
the modern is very compressed and dry sounding. I find now that's the flavor of a modern high gain amp. It's got it's an unusual. It's lost that creamy punch, thick.
Yeah, it's again, it also depends on the company. Marshall, they're using whatever cheapest parts they can because they're doing big production. Yep. And now that they've been bought by holding companies, they just don't. They're not going to care anymore. It's not important.
You'd be very surprised if things got better once you're owned by an investment firm.
No, it always gets worse. I think the only company has held through it pretty good is Fender. Because they got bought by a holding company a while back, and I have not seen them faltering by putting out, absolute garbage. Now they've gone to circuit boards. They've gone, their reissue series. It's not it. It would be better if it was point to point, But I know that's really expensive to do, and it's hard to do. And in this day and age, it's just everything's expensive.
It's cost driven. Yeah.
Well, back in the day when I was with Fender, all those amps were handmade in Mexico, all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, there was diesel trucks would go down and come back every day. At the factory where I was at, the cabinets all the guitars obviously were made there, and all the cabinetry was made, and the final amps were put together and tested and shipped. But the chassis, all that hand wiring, and I can prove it to you because you pull the chassis out, it says MEX on the end for Mexico, on the end of the chassis. But all those hand wired amps were definitely from the late 70s on, definitely were done in Mexico. And because they had a whole situation. The people did great work. They drive these diesel, they had these special things with like 2 troughs or 3 troughs across where they'd put the whole chassis in, no tubes, in lengthwise, totally wired, standing up like this, and there'd be like, I don't know, 20 and 20 on these roller carts, and they'd roll those into these diesel trucks, and they roll them out. And then the guys at Fender would pull them out, put tubes in them, fire them up, test them, and then put them in cabinets, and they went on their happy way. But, they did great work. I saw more crap work on the early Fenders, the ones that were, the old ones, that I found all kinds of stuff where I remember, especially when I was doing a lot of custom Fenders in LA, I would get it because they weren't vintage then. Okay.
Yeah.
They were old amps, but they weren't vintage because remember, it wasn't that long for when I had the shop out there. So I'd get like a 60s, Fender that was made, at Fender. And I was told when I worked there that's why you can't sit there and stick something and say, well, that's not original. Well, it could be original because if it was the day of production and they needed something, they'd send them down to the hardware store. They would send them anywhere that they had to go to get that part
and just get it done.
I remember I got a Fender one time that every cap in it was a disc cap, those horrible disc caps, those flat, skinny disc caps. Every cap in the whole thing, all the tone caps, all the caps were disc caps, and it was the worst sounding piece of garbage because you don't use disc caps for audio path, you use those for filtering high frequency problems. But anyway, every one of the amps, I called the guy, I said, you got a problem here, and that came from the factory that way, and who knows how many they built like that, because what happened is they ran out of parts, and whoever was the head goes, get whatever you can get, and they got these disc caps and did them all in, because it was definitely vintage disc caps. It wasn't like somebody got there. It was all original. And
well, because they say Marshall did a lot of that too, where certain resistors might be different to what the diagram says it should be, and it was because on that day they ran out and off it went.
Well, because when you're running numbers that big, you got to do it. What you got to do is you got to have somebody that's in that position that knows enough to whatever part they're changing out is either better or just as good. It could be from a different company, it can be but it can't be absolute crap. If it's crap, then you're going to deal with a problem like we're talking about. But because a lot of times you're in a manufacturing situation, if you're doing large numbers. I just, not to get down this road, but just recently I went to go look for parts, and WEMAs, which a lot of us use in pedals and stuff. Well, I guess Germany has decided to cut off America because there's none anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it says restricted now. So it's like, really? Wow. that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that, interesting world now. But yeah, you know, I think we're going to start seeing that kind of stuff happening, and
And the prices keep going up.
prices keep going up, and
Yeah.
you know. But you know what? Somebody told me this a long time ago about, because we were talking about how sales have changed, and being a manufacturer has changed. Well, do you know that there are millions of amplifiers, guitars, pedals? Everybody's been making stuff since the 30s at a good pace, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean,
It's been a long time.
there is so much there's so much product out there. When you go to your local music store, you see a bunch of used stuff. It's like that all over the world. It's everywhere. So really, do you really need, unless it's something you absolutely want, that's why, you can buy an old Fender, you can buy an old Marshall, you can buy, all kinds of stuff that's available out there that you can either have refurbed, if you want it stock, just refurb it, because there's parts are available. And I don't know, I think it's what you're finally seeing is we're finally hitting that crest where there's just so much product. It's just so much. It's like the modern kid is not going to buy a 58 Stratocaster or a 58 Les Paul, because there are some incredible knockoffs of a 58 Les Paul and a 64 Strat that play just perfectly. And that what the people that were buying those guitars and paying 125,000 up to 500,000 for a 58 Les Paul, those were the boomers, because it was the year they were born, 58, 57, 59. Okay. And because I used to get people calling me because they were that age and they wanted it for their birthday and they now have money. It's like, hey, anybody's selling a 58 Les Paul because you were born in 58, right? Yeah. It's like, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or a 64 Strat, or, so I've actually just had this conversation with this guy recently where he's got a large collection. And I said, you know what? I think I'd start selling, because I don't think that in 5-10 years, that collection is going to be worth what it's worth right now. Because
so he thinks we've hit peak.
Yeah. Yeah. And because the modern player is not so enamored about having that vintage instrument. It used to be that it was because we went through a crap period. Like there was a crap period where Les Pauls were crap, where Fenders were crap, right? And the only way you could get a good Les Paul or get a good Strat was you went back and you bought an old one.
Yep.
Because that middle era was like 3-bolt necks. My God, let's just go on with all the stuff that was just hideous, right? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that fed having an old guitar. Whereas now, I mean, sadly to say, but those Chibsons that are coming from China, you change out the pickups, you change out the pots, and it rivals a modern Gibson. I mean, it actually plays really well. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know. Yeah.
And it costs you this much money.
Next to nothing.
I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm just saying.
Yep. Definitely. The baseline has come up a long way.
Well, like even a Fender, some of the best Fender Stratocasters are the ones that come out of Mexico because they're made with nitrocellulose, and the all you need to do is just change the pickups and the not the hardware, but the pots and stuff, and you've got a beautiful Strat for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah,
because the wood is beautiful. Some of the best sounding Strats are the Mexican Strats, whereas you get one that's shot with a poly. It's so thick with that poly coating that's dull. It sounds like a stick. You're playing dunk dunk. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because nitrocellulose is what sounds alive, where the body just pings, when you
Yeah,
hit it.
that's
So,
that's
I,
good.
so I think that, you know, I think people are doing that. They're finding, other avenues, and you know, um,
Yep.
you can, like I said, even a Squire sounds great if you got to change all the hardware, you got to change all the pots, but it's still cheaper than buying a handmade Fender.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm
Definitely.
just saying there's ways around it, and I think because of that, you know, you're seeing markets are shifting. You're not seeing as much people spending huge amounts of money on product, and you know, it's the new world, man. It is the
Yeah.
new world. We're all having to, I know I'm changing. I'm having to expand and try new things, and trying to see what new fields. I mean, robotics. I mean, that's the next.
Yep.
That's the next field. Let me tell you. Elon's located here, and he's getting ready to get his robots going. That's going to be a big thing. But
Yeah.
that's going to be that. I know, isn't that interesting? It's
Yeah.
it's
That's a
like,
bit scary, but
yeah,
yeah.
didn't mean to go down that road, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's so. Any other questions?
No, look, Lee, I could keep your all night and my all morning, and
Oh, no problem,
it's
dude.
been it has been invaluable, the insight and the your method of speaking and your stories. Oh, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I suppose the only other thing I was going to quiz you on is being an Aussie. Is have you worked with any Aussies?
Oh, you know what? Somebody just told me there was a guy. Hold on, that used my gear. Was it called 8 Ball Atkins from your area? You heard of him?
No, I haven't
He
heard of
he
him.
he came he came here and recorded one of his albums and used a bunch of my gear. And
Oh, okay,
so
I'll chase that up.
I mean, we sold a lot of my stuff during. I mean, you poor guys, you put such heavy tariffs on. I mean, I'm serious. I sold heads in your market, but they were so expensive.
Yeah.
People
Oh,
would call me going,
yeah.
people would call me going, "Oh my God, Lee, we had nothing to do with it. So we just put it on a boat and
And
shipped
send
it."
it off. Yeah, I know there's
Exactly.
import tariffs, there's GST that goes on top, and then
I
the
know.
Aussie dollar is often 60 cents US, for one of our dollar. So,
I know. So
we're on the back foot at the beginning.
so at some point, that's one country I have not come to yet. I
Oh,
definitely want to
really?
come out. Yeah, I've not been out to Australia. I'd love to come out and spend some
Yeah.
time and just trip around
Oh,
and
you
see.
definitely should. Yeah,
It's
you
a
should
beautiful,
definitely.
beautiful place.
Yeah.
Everybody says positive stuff.
Look, if you
And
if you came into Melbourne, Melbourne is
yeah,
very much like London.
okay.
And then you worked your way up the coast, and then you'd hit Sydney. And Sydney's big claim is it's right on the harbour, and it's sort of the warmer than Melbourne, but not as tropical as Queensland. And then you would work your way up to the Gold Coast, which is where I am, and Brisbane, which is like I haven't been to Miami, but I suppose it'd be similar to
Yeah, yeah.
Miami.
I saw a picture. I'd say it is very close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you
Well,
you
if
would
I
see all that within that, that sort of. It would comfortably take you 3 days to drive it, but it's an hour between flying, an hour and a bit between
right.
each city. Um,
Well,
but
that
yeah,
would
there's a
be
lot to
fun.
see.
I'd love that. Well, we'll stay in contact if I
Definitely,
come
if
out
you are
there.
ever here, please look me up.
Oh, no. Well, same here. If you come to Austin, Texas, we'll go out for some barbecue.
Yeah, look, I would love to come there. I'd actually love to come and see David Grissom play.
He plays every Tuesday night at
Wow.
one of the clubs here every
Oh,
Tuesday
yeah, I'd
for
love to come
for
and see him
free. He
play for
plays
free.
for free every
Oh,
Tuesday.
geez. I
And
tried his signature amp last week.
yeah,
We finally
oh,
got
cool.
one in Brisbane. That the little DGT
Yeah,
15.
yeah. It's
Um,
it's like it's like a plexi style
yeah,
Marshall.
Yeah, I went and had a play
Yeah.
on that. I mean, well, to give you context, that amp, which is sort of PRS's low cost amp, is almost
Right. Yeah.
$2,000 here. So it's not
Ow,
low
ow.
cost.
I know, I know. Well, I've got an interesting thing coming up. Like, one last thing that was interesting is, um, Oxford. It's one of the colleges in England
Yeah.
contacted me. So next month, they asked me to be part of the history of distortion in music.
Really?
So I'm going to be live here, over there during their deal, and they asked if I'd be part of it. And I said sure, and I was like,
Wow,
so
that's great.
that's going to be interesting. It's like
That is
I'm just
unreal.
the thing is, the biggest thing I can say is that always be humble, always be thankful that anything happens, right? Because nobody has to do anything. If I can, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the biggest lesson you learn is
It's
you know what I'm saying? Is just
100%.
always be humble, always be thankful.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for just basic kindness and easiness, isn't there? It's an undervalued
Absolutely.
asset.
Yeah, because people, well, when I meet people, they expect you to have an attitude, and it's like they find out, why would you have an attitude?
Yeah,
What makes you so important, right?
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
no, just
Well, and
it
it
just
adds to the thing of, especially for yourself, you've seen so much, you've done so much, and then to hear you talk and the way you talk is so warm and kind, it's just more to that picture as opposed to, oh, he was a great guy, but geez, he was difficult to deal with.
exactly, a pain in my, well, thank you so
No,
much
thank you,
again.
Lee. I appreciate
And
it. Yeah, it's been a really nice, well, my morning. I've really enjoyed it.
we can always do another one. I got plenty.
Yeah, yeah, perfect.
We got plenty of history. We didn't even touch upon so
Well,
much stuff.
we'll
But
definitely we'll catch up again.
all right. Well, it's
No.
great talking to you.
Thanks very much for sticking to the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do get a chance, if you can hit the like button or leave a 5-star review, that does help other people find the episodes. If you wanted to find out more about this episode, the guest, or any other episodes, head to the website bumpingintothatsound.com.au. There is also an online store, as we are the official Australian distributor for the Legendary Tones Hot Mod, the all-tube additional gain stage plug-in module for most Marshall amps. Head over and take a look. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope to catch up with you on the next one.